Good evening and welcome to the Writer's Block. I'm your host, John Ronan, and as you know now, during our half-hour episodes, I interview writers about their craft, what they've worked on, what they're planning, what they've accomplished through their careers. Tonight is going to be a little different format, however, because this is the last show in our 21-22 season, and it also happens to be the 400th episode in the series. So I thought because of that 400 number, this would be a good occasion to talk about next year's 2023 Gloucester birthday of 400 years. We're also being broadcast by 1623 Studios, which commemorates the birth year of the city. So this is in many ways a very appropriate way to go out of this year's episodes. I'm very happy to say we have three distinguished guests who are chairing committees involved with the planning for the 2023 festivities. They are Beth Pocock. Wave to me, Beth. So the Beth Pocock, who is the Assistant Director at Sawyer Free Library and is chairing the umbrella committee covering the arts for next year's celebration. The second guest I want to mention is Courtney Richardson. Hi, Courtney. She is the director of the Rocky Neck Art Colony, and she will be chairing the committee on the visual arts. And then we have JoeAnn Hart, who is a nationally known novelist and memoirist who lives in Gloucester, and she will be chairing very appropriately the Literary Arts Committee. And they have been generous with their time to, out of busy schedules, to be with us this evening. I want to start with Beth because you are the chair of the Umbrella Committee, and I'd like to ask you a kind of a tough question at the beginning. What is your view or the template for a chair of an arts committee going into the birthday for what you're going to do?
Well, as soon as they asked me to do this, I realized it was much more than one person. Gloucester has such a rich history in the arts, in all of the arts, literary arts, musical arts, performing arts, visual arts, everything. It's way too much, and it's very, it needed to be decentralized. So I said, well, I could do it, but basically I'm the liaison, and we have other committees working in all four of those areas. In addition to that, there are people doing projects in those areas all over the city. And basically, in one way, what the committees do is keep track of what everybody's doing and try and support it. Isabel Pett is creating a calendar which will record all the events, so people, whatever your project, you can apply to be into the 400th calendar and advertise your event at that point in that way. The 400th is glad to do that. They also support these events in two ways, kind of financially. The committee doesn't really have the funds to support big projects of people. They can either endorse partners in which they will co-brand a large project. And if somebody wants to do a large project, they will partner with the 400th will partner with them and co-brand and advertise their organization and that project. And then a small part of the project comes back to the portion. For smaller projects, we do have small stipends. So I would say that the template for the committee chair is just kind of overseeing, supporting, and keeping track of everything that's going on in a very active artistic community.
Yes, it is very active. I think your job is going to be going to be stressful because there's so many other committees and other people involved. I'm glad you mentioned that because we don't have everybody on the show. We couldn't, but we do have 3 representative chairs.
Yeah.
Because this is the writer's block, JoeAnn, I'd like to go to you next and ask you pretty much the same question. What is your image of what you're going to be doing next year with writing and the literary arts in Gloucester?
Yeah, well, John, first of all, thank you for being such an important part of the literary community on Cape Ann for all these years, the 400th episode. I'll be after you at some point to see what your plans are for 2023 in programming. That is our template, is to, we have already so many wonderful literary organizations on Cape Ann. The committee's job is to keep track of what they're doing, encourage them to do something more, and encourage these organizations to do something themed, local artists or local subjects or history or something for 2023. And so things like the Gloucester Writers Center and the T.S. Eliot House, the First R organization, all these things just to sort of keep in track of that we stay on. Everybody's all doing one thing, the bookstores. And so whatever we're asking literary communities and organizations, whatever they do, we'd like them to do more of it and themed for the 400th. So that's the template. That's us.
Thank you. Courtney, you are the chair of the visual committee. I almost said virtual, but maybe it includes virtual as well. The visual committee, can you tell us what you're going to be doing from your seat as the chair and also the director of the Rocky Neck Art Colony?
Sure, thanks, John. So I've been loosely involved in working with Tracy Bain Corbett, who is the director at Art Haven. So she's another kind of co-chair with me. But we, same as what JoeAnn's saying, we've really just been keeping track of what each organization is doing. We all, the citywide, we put on these amazing arts events. We have exhibitions, shows and galleries, musical performances, a lot of collaborating. And I think we're encouraging people to partner with the 400th committee, the overall brand, so that all of that marketing is clear as we make our schedule for the year. The Rocky Neck Art Colony is also celebrating the 50th anniversary of the incorporation as a nonprofit in 2023. So it's a great time for us to really think about our accomplishments over the last 50 years as being the oldest art colony in America, really.
Yes.
But definitely, focusing on some of that history, having some, gallery shows and exhibitions that honor some of the people who made Rocky Neck what it is today, people like Gordon Gettiman in our Cove Gallery, and that's in the old Gettiman Gallery, which is owned by Gordon and Judy Gettiman's son, Mark. So Rocky Neck uses that space, but we're thinking of having an exhibition honoring Gordon and Judith in that space. We've recently, this year, we brought back a walking tour, which highlights the historic artistic history of the neighborhood. So ramping that activity up as well. I think it's important for us all to be celebrating the 400th for our own pride, but it also becomes a destination for visitors. So having programs like an educational walking tour to highlight the artistic history, that will be a draw for people.
I think you mentioned people getting in contact, I think, earlier in your remarks. And before I forget it, through the rest of the show, I want to ask a technical question or practical question to each of you. Where should someone who wants to know about literary events or visual events or any other events connected with the anniversary of the birthday, where should they go? Where should they look? I ask Beth.
Beth?
At this point, anything that is planned at this point will be posted on the website, Gloucester400.com. That's the best place to look for events. The calendar that Isabel is creating that will be very comprehensive is not finished yet. So there's really no place to look at for all of the events. So the only place to look at this point is the website.
Okay, I want to repeat that, Gloucester400.com.
Yeah,
Gloucester, and then the digits.
the numbers 400.
.com. Courtney, where should someone who's interested in visual activity for the birthday go?
So right now it's that same destination. Beth has been really helping feed all of the information to the right people. But you're welcome to reach out to me at my own email address, rnacdirector@gmail.com.
Okay, thank you. Would you repeat that?
NAC
RNAC for Rocky Neck Art Colony.
.director
dot-
@gmail.com.
Okay, thank you. And JoeAnn,
Yeah.
what about what about poets and writers and novelists?
Right. So we are as the literary community, I believe on Cape Ann, we're very intertwined and very collaborative. I think when we start events up and going, that each other's organizations will be
Lisa?
publicizing them on their emails, like the Gloucester
Lisa?
Writers Center will be sending out, their weekly blasts. That Sea Arts, of course, Rocky Neck. I mean, these things will, like we're hoping to do weekly or bi-weekly outdoor reading series at the library that will go out in the library's own thing. I think when the 400th comes, we're all going to be really, plugged into what's going on. And then there's the website itself and the major calendar that, it's going to, in the literary community, at least, it behooves everybody, all the organizations, to promote each other's events. And there'll be a lot of them. We're very incestuous. So, we all know what each other's doing. Yeah.
Yes. Beth, I can't hear you.
I muted myself. I'm sorry. Okay.
Oh, okay, yes.
I gave you the wrong address.
Okay.
Oh,
Can I give it to you again? It's Gloucester MA 400.
Gloucester,
Gloucester MA 400.org.
okay, so it's Gloucester. Say it
MA
again.
for Gloucester
So,
MA for
all written out.
Massachusetts.
No period or anything between Gloucester and MA.
Correct.
Okay,
Here, I'll write it on a piece of paper so I can hold it up. .org.
Yeah.
there has been such amazing art accomplished in Gloucester over its history that I don't envy anybody making a calendar to distinguish or to filter, to triage the events. Yes.
Oh, there we
Can you
are.
see that? Gloucester MA 400.org.
Yeah.
Very good sign. Excellent sign. Thank you for that. Gloucester MA
400.
Gloucester MA 400.org. Okay.
Yeah.
I've been asking specific questions of you from now on. If you want to break in and comment on whatever somebody else has mentioned, please feel free to do so.
Well, I want to tell you about I'll jump right in if anybody, excuse me,
Sure.
but I want to tell you about the timeline because that's something that involves everybody. That a number of people are working on a large digital timeline. Right now, the main people who are working are the three archivists, the three professional archivists in town, our archivist, Julie, and Trenton from the Cape Ann Museum and Peggy from the City Archives.
Uh-huh.
And they are creating a timeline, prehistoric, that we're calling, unofficially, we are now calling it 400 plus rather than Gloucester 400, because 400 was the first European settlement, but Gloucester actually, the residents of Gloucester, this area, go long before that, and we're celebrating that as well. So we'll go back to prehistory, this timeline, and it will come up all the way to the future, and we'll continue. This is going to be a timeline that will be housed on the library, and it will have many layers of Gloucester history. So it will have visual artists and visual history. It will have musical artists in history. It will have the political history. It will have the maritime history. This will all be, and you'll be able to research different levels, different kinds of history that you're looking for. And you'll be able to look it up by an individual person or by a topic, by a subject, by a year. You could look it up by a year and see, okay, here's what was happening in the different areas in that year, say 1850.
Mhm.
Who were the local artists in 1850? What was going on? Who was the mayor? That kind of thing. And there are lots of different people who are feeding information into this timeline. It will be kind of a gift from the 400 to the city in the end, if the whole thing gets accomplished. And what we're hoping to do is put a couple of kiosks around so people can access this information when they're here visiting for the 400.
Good. Sounds good.
Yeah.
Yes.
So that's, there's a lot of work going towards that, as well as the 400 Stories project, which people are aware of, and the 400 Stories will be integrated into that as well.
I'm glad you mentioned that there were people here before we were discovered. I read a book recently titled 1491, and it's about what was going on here many millennia before we discovered it. In regard to that calendar, I want to ask you, Courtney, who in the artistic world would you like to emphasize being a part of that calendar?
Historically?
Yes, your favorite artists.
Okay, that's a loaded question.
I should have warned you. I'm sorry.
But I would say that obviously Fitzhenry Lane in the 1800s, and then moving into the 20th century, I would say John Sloan, Stuart Davis, Edward Hopper, Marsden Hartley, and then contemporary, this behind me, I have a Jeff Weaver painting. I think about all the people today that will be celebrating Rocky Neck residents like Ruth Mordecai, who has been living and working in Gloucester all this time. So many.
There are so many. There are a tremendous number in all fields, and I think that's going to be a real kind of competition to see who gets the ink next year, who doesn't get the ink. Who, JoeAnn, who in the literary arts, in any genre, subgenre, would you like to see have a lot of place on that calendar?
I'd really like to see all the names that we don't know yet. I'd like to see that the real focus on, away from the white European males and, all the people whose writing never really got published, the women, people of color, immigrants. There's writing out there, there's journals, there's diaries that we're hoping that we're going to find these stories, and those will be like, we get to hear hundreds of years of people who didn't have a chance to be heard yet, like the I think that's our goal, is as much diversity in these
Yeah.
names as we can get. I mean, Gloucester's got famous writers. There's the T.S. Eliot House right here in town. I mean, we don't, and Vincent and Charles Olson. I mean, there's big names out there, but we are looking for a wider net of names out there, and to hear, indigenous stories. I mean, there are lots of writers out there who, never got to put their words on paper.
Yes, I'm glad to hear from all three of you, the emphasis on diversity and the expectation that there will be names and events and artistic production that to appear over the next months and the next year that we can't predict yet because we're not acquainted with them.
Right.
I looked at some of the material from the 300th anniversary, and it's not diverse.
Yeah.
It's very, very much old white guys. And,
Yeah, except for the flower committee. The flower committee for the gala was all women. I mean, that was
flowers.
like,
Oh, well,
yeah,
women are good at flowers. Men don't understand flowers.
yeah. So,
The
Just in keeping with that, let me add a couple other things
please,
that are happening, that are projects happening in those areas. Manship, the Manship residency, is very interested in 23 in having immigrant artists from the countries that settled in Gloucester, Finnish, Portuguese, Sicilian, as well as indigenous artists that year. So they're working on diversity as well.
Mhm.
And when you talk about the voices, who's going to get the stage? I know that 1623 is doing a program with Jackie Ganem DeFalco on Cape Ann waves. Courtney may know more about this, that is about contemporary artists, and that will be linked to this timeline that I was talking about. So there'll be a lot of people that you can find out about, and a lot of contemporary authors too, that you'll be able to read and find out about through this, not just the big names. That's all.
You all mentioned that we will be discovering new names and that the calendar is not complete. This show is airing in March. And so it's going to be we're recording a little bit earlier than that, but probably the calendar will still need to be filled out in March. I went back and forth about whether to have a show on the 400th. It's preceding the 400th, but I think it's good to be prepared, and I couldn't resist the 400 connection, to tell you the truth. So
Yeah.
I wanted to get it in early, and our viewers, when they see this show initially and then in the reruns and then perhaps on YouTube, will be inspired to go to that website with the excellent sign that you made, Beth, Gloucester
MA 400,
org.
correct.
Yes.
And they might be inspired to contact us and the 400th about all these voices that have not been heard. If they know of, Aunt Ginny in the back room writing, her novels that never got to see the light of day.
Yes.
We'd love to find that. We have people in Gloucester who this is like their hobby, like David Plur, who seeks out, and goes to the museum and just, finds
Yeah.
writers, just forgotten writers. So, they're out there. We'd love to hear about them.
Good. I hope our viewers take that to heart. I do hope that at some point someone comes forth with something about Indian, Native American literature, pictorial or otherwise, and Native American symbolism and the communication that they had built up prior to 1492.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's in the
that would be-
works.
Yeah, storytelling, that would be oral narratives, and people are on that. There's,
Yes.
Can I,
Well, please, Courtney.
sorry, John, I just wanted to chime in. and Beth and JoeAnn are aware of this, but the city really has been thinking about this for the last few years, even earlier. So there's been such an effort to start documenting some of these early stories in the archives and also online. And that's sort of one of the beautiful results of the COVID pandemic, was that all of a sudden we have all of this material that, you know, anybody can dive into, whether it's on the 1623 Studios website, the Cape Ann Museum Video Vault. The Cape Ann Museum did an exhibition several years ago called Unfolding Histories, all about this, these untold stories, and that lives online. So just to remind everyone that there are ways to start, you know, ramping up your knowledge, and hopefully people will get excited and, you know, come out and share more.
Yes.
And just a reminder about the 400 Stories project as well. I mean, there are more than 400 at this point, I think, on that website that we talked about. All kinds of people have come forward to talk about their stories, and tell their own stories or their family stories. There's also a day coming up where people are going to be able to bring an object, but you'll find out about that in the future.
Okay. I want to mention there was a book, a traditional hard copy book, came out about 20 years ago called A Gloucester Timeline, which has individual dates and events day by day, not day by day, but month by month, year by year. And it's a huge, huge book. It's very, very handsome book that's available. There are many interesting, sometimes humorous, sometimes tragic incidents that have been filtered out by political correctness, I would say. I want to ask you briefly, we're almost out of time. If you could give me or give our viewers one bit of advice for getting prepared for the 400th. JoeAnn.
Just the participation, you know, come and hear the programs that are going on. We're reaching out to a lot of you know, different cohorts like veterans and college age students to come and do readings. And so come and hear the voices of Gloucester.
And almost everything will be free, I understand.
Everything will be free, yes.
Courtney, do you have any advice to viewers?
I think really getting, you know, once we have access to that master calendar, really marking your calendars and knowing what's going on. One event we didn't mention is to take place in the fall at Stage Fort Park, and it will be a heritage, kind of celebrating the heritage of Gloucester, but taking over the entire park. And that's something that we've never done before, and that all of the visual art, I mean, all of the arts committees are a part of planning. So just really, once those dates are set, you know, I know some people will mark their calendars because they're getting out of town, but I think they should, you know, plan to participate. Right.
Beth, I want to ask you if you can hold up that sign again. Your graphics are excellent.
Of course. Tell me about where.
Yep, back up there. Good.
Gloucester, that's perfect. Right there.
Gloucester MA 400.org.
I hope our viewers can remember that or write that down and get in touch with whoever is handling their particular field of art and expertise. I want to thank you, JoeAnn and Courtney and Beth, for being a part of this concluding 21-22 season and also our 400th show. I appreciate your time, your expertise, and your energy and your optimism about the future. Thank you all.
Thank you, John.
Thank you.
It's nice to be with you.
Thank you, John. Thanks for having us.
Thank you. I want to thank our viewers too for being with us on the Writer's Block. If you've learned something about Gloucester's 400th celebrations from Beth, from Courtney, from JoeAnn, then the Writer's Block has done its job. I won't say I'll see you again next week because this is the last program. I will see you again next year. Good night.